Here we go. Okay, hello everybody. My name is Peter. I'm from the Mukdong branch, and I'll be conducting the C1 High program workshop for today. Again, if you guys have any questions, I can't really see the chat, but please just write them down and I'll be happy to answer any questions at the end of the workshop, okay? So overall, what I'll be doing is I'll be giving you a basic overview of the program, as well as the objectives that you're trying to reach in every class, as well as a general class structure. Then I'll go back and forth between the Smart Textbook, as well as some images and slides that I have about the overall program. And then obviously the class components. And then lastly, just any reminders and questions we'll have, okay? So for the C1 program, the good thing is having already taught the A2 program, you actually have a really good foundational knowledge in order to enter this program. I would say the C1 program and C2 track are a lot more fun and a lot more approachable for both teachers and students, okay? And I'll explain that as we go through. Okay, so for the C1 levels, since it's the high program, you'll be focusing on Eagle, Alba, and Albatross Plus. One of the main things that you're focusing on in this class is the focus of development of academic language. And I'll explain that a little bit as we go through, and you'll notice that when we go through the slides in the program. Okay, in addition, we're looking at critical thinking analysis and evaluation of content. Overall, we're just looking to enhance topical knowledge in an academic setting, okay? And this is where the C1 program, I think, is way better than your A2 program. So if you crawl from your A2 program, when you're doing the skill-based classes, you're doing a reading on the Renaissance, and then you're doing a reading on spiderwebs, and then you're doing your reading on DST and pollution in the environment. There's absolutely no cohesion to the lesson, which makes it a little bit more difficult to build interest, create discussions, and really get your students engaged. This is where the C2 program, the C1 program is a little bit different. Each one of the programs is topical based, okay? So each lesson, for example, this is C1 Albatross. Lesson 1, the climate change will be the overall topic throughout the whole lesson. That means the reading, listening, writing, or speaking will all be based on that topic. Each lesson is a new topic. Honestly, some of the topics are really great. Students are going to have a lot of fun. You're going to be able to find media cards. You're going to have activities and good discussion questions. Some of them you're going to have to work with a little bit, different. Some of the good ones I remember from Albatross Plus, Albatross was pop science. That's a great one, where there's like, Mr. Wizard, if you're an old school guy, or I forget that other guy's name, but he got famous for making like the squirrels do all like those jumping and like, does anyone know who I'm talking about? He's really famous. He like sells, who is it, Rebecca? What's his name again? Oh, you don't remember? Okay. But that guy, he's going to show up a lot of stuff like there. Here, there are other things like, for example, DNA profiling. You might not think it's a lot of fun, but for when I did this class, I thought of it a little bit more of like detective, right? And there were a couple of things I could do, like little puzzles and riddles in order to identify like who the killer was based on their DNA. There's a couple of YouTube videos that I used in there also. Here, obviously, technology addiction, that's a common one that students will be able to attach to and have pretty good discussions with. So here, same thing is for all the other programs in the C1, right? So here, C1 Eagle from red to green. Here, we're talking about space, Mars, all that type of stuff. Advertising mayhem was also a great one that I did. I remember that one the students really liked. Conspiracy theories were also a really good one. But here, just keep in mind that overall, each lesson, it'll be topical based. Unfortunately, though, it is a little bit more academic, but that's okay. It's way better than, I would say, the A2 program, where you have maybe 5 different topics in the listening, and each one is a little bit different, okay? So here, those are basically the overall topical based lessons. Then we go to the class structure. Here, the class structure and information is all found on the segment guides. You should be able to access those either through the FTP, right? Or hopefully your BM or one of your managers will also provide you with that material. If you need, you're welcome to email me. I'll be happy to help you out and guide you in the right direction if you need, okay? Here though is just basically like my overview. So just like all typical Cheongdam classes, there are 3-hour blocks, okay? Here, for the C1 High, I think the big thing to keep in mind is within your first hour, the big thing is you want to start your reading introduction, okay? You want to introduce the reading topic and have some type of discussion, media cards or videos that you're going to use to introduce the lesson's topic. I'll go over this thing called critical skills, and this is something that you really need to maintain and keep in mind with your time management, okay? Then my second hour, By the end of the second hour, it's the same idea. I want to be able to introduce the listening skills and hopefully maybe even start some of my note taking. Okay. That way, depending on what you're doing for your writing or speaking, okay, you're going to need around 30 to 40 minutes. The writing for this term is a little bit different. So I'll go over that towards the end. But here, these are just basic goals that I try to keep in mind when I'm running the C1 program high. So again, I want to introduce the reading by the end of the first hour. I want to introduce the listening by the end of the second hour. And I want to make sure that I manage my time to give myself about 30 to 40 minutes to complete the writing section. Okay. Here, just like similar to A2, we'll have integrated writing on odd weeks. So that's 1, 3, 5, and 7. Okay. Keep in mind, week 1 is always a difficult one because we're doing introductions, we're doing welcome letters, and we're getting students acclimated to the lesson, particularly those who are going to be an Eagle. This is totally a new level for them. Everything is different. Okay. So you are going to want to manage your time carefully because you do want to introduce that writing, especially on lesson 1. Okay. Then afterwards, the other weeks are basically persuasive or opinion writing speaking. Okay. So just keep them that. Yeah, sorry, this should be speaking, opinion speaking. Okay. So all even weeks will be the opinion speaking. That's pretty simple. Basically what you did for maybe if you did A2, oh no, you did integrated. Okay, we'll go over those. It's a lot easier though, so don't worry about the speaking as much. It's the writing that's going to be really a little bit more difficult to go through. Okay. Here, so the critical skills, like I said at the beginning of the class, there'll be about 30 to 40 minutes that you're going to have to use to have your critical skills. This can eat your time like crazy. Okay. It is so many pages and students are going to have difficulty completing them. You're going to have difficulty completing them. So keep that in mind. And I'll give you some tips and tricks on how to do it. The critical skills are basically a way to teach students how to make logical, informed decisions, as well as use evidence in situation. The idea is to help them prepare to enter the master's program a little bit later on. These are not IBT TOEFL skills. These are more like literature skills or speaking skills or analytical skills. And here for these, it's going to be several pages. Okay. So here I'm going to jump into the C1 Albatross Plus. Make it a little bigger. Okay. So here, if you look, it's going to start off with a critical skill. The critical skill for C1 Albatross Plus lesson 1 is personal values and different perspectives. They'll give you like a little introduction. You'll call on students, you'll read the little box, and then you'll give your own examples. I find it's easy to use some kind of media cards to help explain the ideas. Then you'll start off with a prime 1, okay? And what this is just an example. Here, they're just asking the question, do you agree with the writer? Why or why not? Can you understand the writer is coming from this with this perspective? Then they're going to explain. There's going to be like an explanation page where they give like the definition. So here, if you look, well, they're giving us the definition of what a value comes from and then where your perspective comes from. Then after they give you the information, they actually go back to prime page, okay? So if you remember, this is the first prime or the prime I just showed you right here. I have serious concerns about the level of preparation high school students right here. I have serious concerns about the level of preparation high school students. So what this is doing is it's introducing it to them, then it's explaining the skill to them, and then it's showing them how that skill is applied to this particular reading, okay? Again, the skills change every week, so keep that in mind, okay? So here they're going to explain how the wording, what it means, and how it gives either perspective or a value depending on the lesson for this one, okay? Then you'll have practices. There'll be several practices that you need to do, okay? So this one has a total of 5. Okay, so here, because we're talking about values and perspective, basically we're taking a potential person. So here's an investment banker who grew up a poor orphan, but is now the father of 4 children. So what values do you think that they would have? Here, there's really no wrong answers necessarily. They just have to logically connect it, okay? Here, so there are some answers, obviously, that you can click, but you may need to go over them. Now, if you look here, there's going to be several practices, okay? So this one actually isn't that bad, but here, page 6, all the way to page 11, okay? So they are a lot of practices. There are audios and there's written ones. So here there's short answers, there's multiple choice, depending on what the lesson is, okay? So here, this is where, like I said, you need to make sure that you prepare your lesson, and you need to make sure that you decide which practices you would like to do. Which practices do you think is the best to do? Okay. They do provide you in the SIG guide, like, oh, these are the questions you should do, but it's still way too many. Okay. So here, for example, I personally would probably not do the typing one, only because it's going to take too long for my students to type out the answers. If I really like it, though, then I might do one or two of them, okay? But I would then have to eliminate some other ones, okay? These multiple choice ones are a little bit easier, so maybe you'll do one together, have them do two on their own. So I do, we do, you do type thing, right? And you could easily do all three of these, okay? But you can't skip these sections. The reason you can't skip them is because there's typically one question on the reading or the listening later on that relates to one of these skills, okay? If you skip it, students are gonna have difficulties answering the question. It'll have something about perspective or something about values, like, oh, what is the author's most likely value, or what is their perspective, or why do they have that perspective? They won't be able to answer that question, okay? So make sure you keep that in mind when you're doing this. Again, like I said, I want to have this done in the first hour. Definitely do not go over the first hour. So especially on week one, lesson one, I would cut out and eliminate a lot of them. Another thing I also eliminate personally when I do it, some teachers really like it, but I eliminate the 2 prime pages. So because I haven't taught them anything and I haven't really explained anything about personal values or different perspectives, I just eliminate this one and I use the practices. However, I do know some teachers, they prefer to use both the primes and then eliminate some of the practices. Does that make sense? Okay, so the short story is you got to eliminate some of these pages, or you got to eliminate some of the exercises. Okay. Then by the time my hour is done, okay, I want to be here, okay? And this is very similar to the C1 low, A2. It's just basically called topic connect, right? So topic introduction. Here, it's a page. Okay, so what is today's topic? Just like you would do in any other class, right? You'd have media cards. You explain what the topic is. We're talking about work. We're talking about culture. You can use different media cards, okay? There are shifting attitudes. What does that mean? Are the attitudes the same? Are the attitudes different, okay? Then they don't use vocabulary words in the sense like for the mid and lower levels, there isn't a list of vocabulary words. Instead, they give these related words. Now, some of the words will actually be related. Sometimes these words really don't have any meaning or aren't really related to the actual reading or listening. So just be careful which words you're going over. And when students might ask sometimes, this one is actually pretty good, this one, the Albatross Plus, but some of the other levels, it's like they really don't need to know any of these words because they don't even bring them up. It's just more to introduce the topic. Just keep that in mind. So this is where you're going to introduce vocabulary words. You're going to introduce like media cards and other types of images just to get them introduced and also make it a little bit more interesting, okay? All right, so before you get into the reading though, if you notice, there is no little, what was it? Those little link pages to like the skills, right? So remember like skim, scan, annotate, the Cheongdam pizza, all that stuff. So you're gonna need to add those in yourself. Luckily, like I said, you've done A2, so you should already be familiar with the Cheongdam pizza, topic, thesis, main ideas, and major details, right? How to find them, repeated words, right? Looking for transition words, looking for author's opinion, magic numbers, all these skills, right? So now, luckily, because you've already had A2, and this is where I say it's kind of good to be A2 your first term, because you actually get all these skills that you get to apply to the C1 program. And you look pretty smart. They're, wow, teacher really knows a lot of stuff. How did they know that? Okay, here for the skills, okay, you guys should already know most of these stuff. Now, keep in mind that this is now Eagle, Alba, and Albatross Plus, right? So this means that these students have seen the Cheongdam pizza, let's say, since maybe Mega, right? So that's Mega, Giga, Terra, Bridge, Par, Birdie, right? So that's 6 terms that they should have been able to see this, okay? This means also that the material is going to get dramatically more difficult, okay? So it's not just about putting the upside down triangle on the board. It's about delving a little bit deeper and showing them a little bit higher level skills. To do that, one thing you can use is the actual workbooks. So in the workbooks, there's actually some skill pages. These used to be back in the day, the start of every skill lesson, kind of like in A2 and stuff. So here in the back of your books or the students' workbooks, they'll have these types of skills. So here, it's not just about topic, main idea, and supporting details, but it's also about how to outline the passage appropriately, how to take notes and annotate your passage, right? So that way you can use those notes to answer questions a little bit later. In addition, it's about predicting, right? How can we predict using WH questions, using the holistic method in order to make good predictions on what type of information we're going to be looking for in the reading or in the listening, okay? So I think these skills are really good. I think they're easy to use and they're in the workbook and there should be several lessons of them. These ones aren't the first one. The first one is obviously the upside down triangle and everything like that, right? So here, you don't necessarily have to like go directly into the workbook, but if I was you, I would review those skills and then say, hey, I could introduce this skill over the next week or two, right? I could maybe focus a little bit more on how to outline the passage. I could focus on prediction questions. I could predict, right, what are we gonna read about? What could possibly be the main ideas or how might they support those ideas? So keep that in mind when you're doing the reading and the listening. They won't have that little link to like skill pages like you did in A2, okay? The idea also for upper levels is that hopefully you already have experience and therefore you should be a little bit more familiar with those skills, okay? However, keep in mind though, right, when you're building the skills, a lot of times the teachers are like, oh my gosh, like how do we get through all this? How do we do all this? Just like any Cheongdam program, it's a whole bunch of quantity and sometimes our quality is like, okay. So here, just keep in mind, it's all about scaffolding, right? Start the term, right, with a more guided approach, guide your students. That does mean you won't necessarily, like, it's not guide them through the whole thing, right? So you see it in your students sometimes, especially during the achievement test, right? As they're doing all the reading and as they're doing all the listening, they slowly start to die, right? They're, right? So don't kill them, okay? So when you guide them, remember, what's the purpose? It's so that they can start doing it independently, right? And they understand the fundamental skill. What is it that you want them to start doing? You don't have to do the whole reading to get that done, right? You could do maybe the first 2 paragraphs, right? And then have them try it on their own, right? So it's a simple idea, like I do, we do, you do, right? So, right, you're gonna build that throughout the whole term. Hopefully by the end of the term, around weeks 8, 7, maybe 9, right? The students will be able to do this pretty much independently. You'll help individual students and also they'll be teaching you in the sense. So they'll be guiding the lesson because they'll have already familiar with all the skills that you've gone over, okay? So here, for the reading section, okay, the readings, just so you know, if they are identical on my page here, the one on the left is the workbook. I typically use the workbook. And at our branch, we really like to use it. I just find it a lot easier for them to annotate, circle, underline, and then be able to answer the questions. But there is the reading in the workbook. Also, there is a section for passage outline, right? Note taking. So paragraph 1, paragraph 2, right? As well as, right, there is an area here for them in the smart book. However, as I'm sure you realize, writing in the smart book is just not that good, right? So I strictly recommend using the workbook, just telling your students, open up the workbook, I put eyes on teacher, and then I can annotate with them and stuff like that. Now, for the upper levels, okay, again, it's expected that you have the ability, you know how to prep, and that you are, you know, a responsible teacher because it is going to be up to you. So for example, unlike the A2, right? So here, if I go here and I press the answer key, right? Or there's no light bulbs if you see here, right? No light bulbs like A2. If I press the answer key, this is what you're going to get, okay? You're going to get a set of notes next to each paragraph, okay? I don't know if you've ever noticed, but I always felt like some of the notes here, they're just not how I would write notes, not at all. This is not how I would outline a reading passage. However, this is for you basically to kind of get an idea of what the major details are and what information should be included in your notes, okay? So keep that in mind. So what you need to do is you need to prepare, you need to prep, right? Here, Remember the skills like the upside down triangle pizza, the repeated words, the magic numbers, the transition words. You should be applying those to your prep. The more you use it and the more you show students how they work and that they are effective, right? The more they'll buy into it and the more they'll be like, oh, wow, teacher's really smart. Teacher's absolutely right. That was so easy. I should listen to the teacher, right? If they don't trust you, right, then they're not going to do the work, right? You have to show them that it's capable and like possible. So here, this is just a basic prep on how I would outline it, okay? If you have the workbook, we have copies of the workbook. We like made scan copies of it. So I just download my copy of the workbook and then I just prep out all my lessons, okay? You can use now, like Samsung has a great one now. I use something called Kami. There's like a free version that just lets me do all of this. It's super easy. It's Kami, Kami. And then you can annotate any PDF that you want. If you pay the paid version, it's actually really like fancy, but I don't need that. Okay. But here, if you notice, these are my notes. Okay. So if you look just like before, I'm going to be looking for repeated words. What is the topic, right? Transition words. And then I have other like ideas or keywords in blue, baby blue, right? That either are related to questions or other ideas. Okay. Now here, like I said, I wouldn't kill my students, but maybe for the first day, I would do the first and second paragraph with them. I would then allow them to try to apply the skills, right, on the next paragraphs independently. There's no way you're going to be able to go through the whole essay, right? Look how long these are, right? Guided. It's going to just take you too long and you're going to kill your students, okay? But what I do then is when I go to the questions, right? Question number 1, question number 2, because these are coming from the first 2 paragraphs, we should all get these correct, 100%. Why? Because I guided them on how to properly outline the passage, how to annotate, how to identify the key words. And then they're like, oh, wow, that was great. I did a good job. And then I can analyze whether or not they were able to do it independently based on how they did on their own, right? So here, again, these are all, right, IBT TOEFL style questions. Majority of them are, okay? However, there are specific reading type questions and specific listening type questions. The C1 program does not go over all the question types. So there is no sentence simplification. There is no sentence insertion, and there is no summary questions. And I think there's a couple other ones that there aren't, okay? So keep that in mind, right? But overall, you should have already learned these in your A2 program. If it doesn't matter which one you taught, low, mid, or high, right? So here you know, like, okay, well, what do? We identify the keyword in the question. What are they asking about? What is the passage mainly about? Okay, what is it mainly about? All right, so that is the topic plus the thesis or opinion. So what was the repeated word? Okay, maybe it was COVID-19, COVID-19, COVID-19. Good, so here we can eliminate C, right? Why? Because it doesn't have our topic. And then what were they saying about COVID-19? Right? So here, people prefer working at home, improved fortunes of video conferences, changed workers' expectations, right? And then you would just use those same skills that you learned in A2, right? All right. So, and then you can show the answer D, change workers' expectations, okay? Here, be careful. This does have more than one answer, okay? Where is it? Okay, so here, this would be like paragraph 2. So I actually get quite a bit of the question, right? So what is this city? What is true? So there's a factual question. What is true about this city? If you remember from my annotations and from my notes, I can tell students really quickly, oh, what paragraph, right? What paragraph did we see the name of this city, right? Oh, right here in paragraph 2, we saw the name of the city. Okay, let's take a look at this paragraph, see if we have maybe our answer in our notes. If not, let's read around this area and see if we can answer the question, okay? So that's all about, right, the reading skills and getting them to understand that, okay? Again, these skills will not be in the smart book, right? There won't be specific steps with light bulbs like you had on A2. You're gonna need to start applying those skills yourself, okay? All right. Oh, wait, there is sentence insertion. I'm sorry. There's no summary question or I think simplification, but not all the questions, okay? So here the questions are about 8. I would say in, I guess, normal time. You're looking for them to be able to do this in about 10 minutes, answer all these questions. Again, just keep in mind, you are going to guide them a little bit, right? So just when you're doing your overall schedule, just remember, I want to be finished with the reading within the second hour, and I want to get to the listening before that next hour, okay? Here, this is called the discuss page. Okay. Now, one thing I just want to point out, I just noticed that new teachers will do it a lot. If you look here, there is an audio button, but this isn't the listening, and you don't need to press the audio. Basically, what this is for is that students can access the smart book when they go home. And sometimes parents or they want to listen to the audio, like maybe for pronunciation or just reading that passage, right, while they listen, just to help with their independent work. But here, you do not need to press this at all, okay? So here, just like the title says, it's discuss, okay? That's all it is. Some people call it like a commercial break, right? I just grinded my students, right, with all these skills and all these questions and all these justifications. We need a moment to like recuperate, you know, like take a breath, right? So all you need to do is pick either a specific idea in the reading or the general idea in the reading and have a discussion about it, okay? Here, again, remember, it's topical based. So here we're talking about work or we're talking about anti-work. I mean, you could just say like, oh, what do you guys want to be when you grow up, right? What job do you want to be? Raise your hand if you want to be a Cheongdam teacher. It doesn't have to be like what about COVID and the anti-work revolution and all that stuff, right? It just has to be general topics. So again, that's why I like the C1 program a little bit better. Find the topics are just a lot more approachable and easier to use. Here, this is where you add media cards or YouTube video. And it's just an area. You don't need to go through it. You don't need to read anything. You don't need any of that because we already did it. Does that make sense? Okay. Again, don't press the audio. Here, they do provide you, like next to each paragraph, you'll see like these little Ds. And basically, these are like ideas for discussion questions, right? So here, look at the title. What do you think the past, like, no, that's not a discussion. Has COVID pandemic affected you and your family? Well, COVID's kind of done, so that's no longer valid, right? So here, again, would you support a shorter school week? Okay, that's a good question. Maybe pull on that one. But you don't need to go over, you don't need 10 questions. You just need one good question to get everyone involved. Typically, I'll start off with like a 50-50 or raise your hand, right? Oh, who wants a shorter week? Who wants a longer week? Who wants 10-minute break, right? Then you get the hands raised. Then you talk to individuals and you have them answer or support their opinion or prove their opinion in some way, okay? All right. So then we move on to the listening section, okay? Again, for the listening section, again, I love the workbook, love the workbook, love the workbook. Right here, there's a whole blank page. Don't kill trees. Use the paper that they gave us for note-taking, okay? Here, again, they say write the notes right here, right? But you already know it says this little pen function, they can type it or they can write it. There's no way they can be able to type in time or that the pen functions are going to work, okay? Same thing as in the reading. There is no light bulb, there's no skills, there's no link, right? So again, having done A2, whether or not you did low, mid, or high, you hopefully have a good foundational knowledge of basic skills for note-taking, right? So everybody knows like the ask, right? The media card ask, right? All that stuff. And I'll give you a new one, right? So here's just one, right? And again, these are great. Honestly, media cards are great. Back in the day, we had to make our own. Now, if you don't know, you just hop in, you import a media card, you find one you like, right? And you throw it in, okay? Or you can make your own. So here's one, Joanna. She's teacher at our branch. Great, got it. Now I can just go, oh, now I can just go over it, okay? Here though, okay, there's no light bulb, there's nothing for you, okay? But you don't have to listen to the whole lecture necessarily, okay? So in your preparation, it's super annoying, I would say. These are a lot longer. They're about 4 minutes, and they are almost, no, they're always a lecture or discussion, okay? So if you don't know, there's three types. There's three types pretty much. There's conversation, lecture, and discussion, okay? Lecture and discussion are the more difficult ones, okay? The difference between a lecture and discussion is just in a discussion, that's when like a student will answer a question, right? Or the teacher will be like, does anybody know like why blah, 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 blah happened? And then, oh, teacher, I think it was blah, 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 right? And then I usually pause it and I was like, what do you think? The teacher's going to say they're right, they're wrong, or they're stupid, or go home, right? And they're like, oh, they're right, or they're wrong, right? And that's what a discussion is. So just keep that in mind. But here, a majority of them are going to be lectures and discussions because that's also a lot more difficult. And remember, this is based off of IBT TOEFL. Okay, IBT TOEFL, if you don't know, is an academic language basic test, right? The idea is that students who take this test will one day go to a foreign country where English is the main language and they will study. So basically they're going to go to a university or even high school, right, in America or Australia or the UK or something like that. So therefore this test simulates that idea. So that's why everything is like an academic setting. And sometimes you're wondering like, why is my elementary kid learning about these subjects that like are totally irrelevant? Well, it's because of the test. It's meant for students who want to go to a university or want to go study abroad, okay? So here they can be a little bit boring and they can definitely be a little bit long. Again, right, you should provide guidance, okay? But again, I would not go through the whole thing. At some point, you got to just like let them go and crash, right? Again, I'd start in the beginning, help get the topic, thesis statement, maybe do some prediction skills on what the main ideas might be. And depending on how many main ideas there are, I might get one or two, and I would write model notes on the board. Then I would let them try to do it on their own, okay? So here, definitely pausing and playing. You know, on the smart book, you can pin different sections. Personally, I don't like to do that only because then my students are always like, they know when to listen. They're only going to listen to the parts that I have the pins on. So therefore, what I do, and what you can do is you can get a script, okay? They should be also on the FTP. All the upper levels should have a script that you can access, okay? So here, I just copy and pasted the script into the smart textbook right here, right? Just for visual purposes. And here, I'm basically doing the same exact thing that I do for the reading. If you can prep a reading, you can prep a listening, okay? If anything, prepping a listening is easier because it goes in an order, because speaking wise, it makes more sense, but writing can be a little bit like jumpy in a sense. Then I also will make my own set of notes, okay? Here, just like I would do for my reading, right? Transition words. So here I have to begin with, right? So that signals, right, here to begin with in the actual script. So again, you can get these scripts, and then I just do the same thing. I prep out my script as I would do my reading, okay? Then when I conduct the lesson, it's a little bit easier. Same idea. I have my main ideas that start in the beginning all the way down to the end. And then my baby blues are like keywords and ideas that are going to show up that I either need in my notes to answer questions later on, okay? All right. If you don't know, transition words, keywords, magic numbers, those are all very important, okay? All right. So here, again, there's nothing in the listening, no light bulbs, nothing at all, just a blank page. So use the workbook. Okay, then here you have the questions, okay? So the achievement test for the listening section, anybody know how long did students have to answer the question, a one question? Does anyone know? Nicole, you got an idea? I thought I saw a hand.
Very little, like seconds,
How many seconds?
maybe like 5.
Close, close. They had like 10 seconds. They have like no time to answer these questions, okay? If you think about it though, there is also like the talking part. So basically it's like, what is the lecture mainly about? 10, 9, 8, 7. So 10 seconds is crazy, okay? Like I don't even think I could read all 4 answer choices in 10 seconds, okay? So you really, really need to teach your students the skills. And you really, really need to set them up for what the test is going to be like. There aren't a lot of questions, okay? There's usually about like 6, 7 questions, okay? But, okay, they need to understand, like they have to answer these, right, really fast. So sometimes I understand, hey, I want to give them more time. Hey, I want them to have good grades and scores and all this stuff, right? But if you give them 20 minutes, right, to answer all 6 questions, that is just not going to be realistic when they get to the test. They're going to, they're going to fall apart, right? I would say for the beginning, personally, I'd probably give them about 10 minutes, right? At the start, I'll say, okay, guys, you got about 10 minutes. I'd probably guide them on one or two of them, just like I did in the other ones, right? So I do, we do, you do, right? So here, just like we did in the reading, oh, what is the lecture mainly about? Okay, once again, COVID does not have it, right? Did not change our lives or led to something shift in the company, right? So here, did we say it did not do anything or it did do something? And then hopefully they can take a 50-50, okay? Here, but the idea, I would say, even like 10 seconds is like insane. I'll be honest. Oops. 10 seconds is insane. So by the end of the term, right, or towards the end of the term before the test, I'm probably giving them about 5 minutes. So it's under a minute per question. So I start off with around 10 and I tell them like, we're going to cut this in half because they'll be like 10 minutes. Oh my gosh, teacher, da, 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 right? And then you can just tell them like, hey, how much time did you guys have? Like 10 seconds. That's the goal we're going for, right? We're trying to move through these quickly. Okay. Again, how do you do that? Good notes, good notes, good notes. It's all about a good set of notes to help them out. Okay. And then knowing the skills and how to eliminate incorrect answers and stuff. Okay. All right. Here, this one could potentially be, like I said, like how does the speaker feel? This could be maybe the value and perspective questions, right? The critical skills that you'll also need to hit on here. So just remember those questions will be in there. Sometimes they're easy. Sometimes they're just a little bit more difficult for students just because of the concepts, okay? Any questions on that? How are we doing? Good? All right, fantastic. All right, moving along, okay? Here, we then have basically like a map, right? So basically what it's doing is just outlining what we did for the day, okay? So here, obviously our topic of the day, which was work culture, right? Here, impact on work culture is here to stay, the company and employee differences, and then this is the listening section that we just did, okay? Here for the listening section, they give you a, for the listening section, they give you a little outline. You can press the little light bulb. So here you can just like, elicit from your students, hey guys, what was the opinion again about the work cultures? Oh, the changes will not be better. Okay. Oh, here we said, oh, in different parts of the countries or different part of the world, what countries, what worlds do we talk about, right? Here, also, it has damaged our city centers. Oh, what city? Our Seoul, Myeongdong district, right? Yeah, no more shopping. All the stores closed. Da 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 da. All right. Nobody was here during COVID, huh? Was anybody here during COVID? Okay, it was a fun time. All right, let's move on. So now this would be, I would say, hopefully I have about 30. If I'm really good, I got like 40 minutes, okay? Most likely though, because it's lesson one, you're gonna have like 15 minutes, okay? And you're like, oh man, I'm so far behind. But it's okay, it's lesson one. If you don't know, I always tell my teachers, I say, all you need to do is just make sure you reiterate, right? Okay, guys, today's the first day. We got to know each other. We had to go over some basic rules, right? However, right, next week or other classes, we will be completing all components because otherwise kids will go home and be like, oh, teacher didn't do writing. Teacher skipped all this stuff. And then you get complaints, okay? Because, our students, they're like super students and they're like, no, how dare you not give me a test, okay? But here, this is the integrated writing. This is a brand new type of writing, okay? For most of you, this is probably something you're not familiar with, but what you'll do is you will introduce it. You will start it in the class, and then they will complete it for the I-learning. So that's why it's important that you do make sure that you get this done. So that way students, okay, can do their I-learning effectively. Otherwise, if you don't go over it, when they go home and they're like, Mom, I don't understand this, I don't get this, right? So then parents are gonna call the staff and the staff are gonna be like, I don't know what this is, right? Rebecca didn't go over this, Leslie didn't go over, right? And it's just gonna cause a little bit of hectic. So if you have to, cut things short, right? And make sure you stick to those timestamps, right? So for the listening, just, if you can't justify all of them because you're going over, say, hey, I gotta stop. I got to get to the writing. I have to introduce it, okay? Here, this is just going to give you the directions, and I'll go over the directions in just a second, Okay. And this is just the like step-by-step process. Okay. And then this is the actual practice that they'll need to do. Okay. And I'll go over this. So for the integrated writing, again, they can access this smart book at home, but I just find like, that's their typing is too slow, all this stuff. So therefore, I like to have the workbook. Again, there is a section in the workbook. Okay. So integrated writing is much different than the independent writing task that you did this term. Okay. For the integrated writing, it has three components. Okay. First, you read a short academic passage. Okay. It's just like the normal reading. Only difference is it's much shorter. Okay. It's much easier. Second, you will listen to a lecture based on the same subject. Then the writing task is students need to explain how the listening is related to the reading. There's no opinion, there's no hook, there's no conclusion, okay? They simply need to write on how the listening and the reading are related. That's why it's called integrated, okay? Because they're mixed together, the reading and listening, okay? For the reading passage, they'll have 3 minutes to read. Like I said, the reading passage is way more manageable. It's not very long. It has very clear like signal phrases like, first of all, I believe. Second of all, I think, right? Same thing with the listening, okay? The lecture is much shorter. It's only about 2 minutes typically, okay? And then they will have 20 minutes to write the passage. They will be able to look at the reading while they do the actual writing, okay? And this is the same for the achievement test because this will be on their achievement test, okay? Here, but they do not get to listen to the lecture again. So it's extremely important that they have good set of notes, okay? Now, there is actually 3 ways that the reading and listening do relate. Okay, the 3 common ways or the 3 actual ways are cast out, support, and provide additional information. However, Cheongdam always in the past, I don't remember the last time, we used to have different ones, but in the past, I don't know, decade, it's always been cast out. Okay, so just teach them cast out in all honesty. But unfortunately, which is really annoying, is their iLearning does introduce all 3. I had a student, he was having some problem with his iLearning, and then I helped him out, and then I looked at it and I was like, man, that one's so unfair. It's support. Nothing has been support for years. But just so you know, okay. But if you don't know, basically the general idea is that you'll have, right, an essay with opinions, right, or reasons, right. If it is support, it just basically gives another example to one of those reasons. Okay. And then if it's additional information, it'll give like a new reason for something, like a 4th reason on why something is good or bad. Okay. But I'm really going to go into support or provide you additional information. I'm just going to focus on cast out for this. Okay. So cast out is very similar to contrast. Okay. However, there is a specific difference that you need to keep in mind, okay? So cast out, you will use contrast transition words like however, but, right? Stuff like that. However, the difference between cast out and contrast has 2 topics. Cast out has a single topic. So for example, if I'm contrasting something, right? Let's say 1, I think red is the best color. However, someone else, I think blue is the best color. When I contrast, I'm talking about 2 different colors. However, in cast out, I'm only talking about 1 color. So here, I think blue is the best color. And then a cast out would be, no, I do not think blue is the best color. So the topic for your reading and the topic for the lecture will be the same. So that's why it's called cast out. Then basically what happens is the main ideas will directly go against usually the idea in the reading. So for example, let's say I think blue is the best color. Why? My first reason is because the ocean is blue and the ocean is powerful, right? Cast out, the lecturer will say, well, I don't think blue is the best color. And actually the ocean is green and it's polluted and it's dirty. So I do not think blue is the best color. So it'll definitely usually link up in that sense. Does that make sense? Okay. So here, For the lesson, you probably won't be able to have them do like the whole thing, though they only need to do the first 2 paragraphs, but hopefully you can get like the first paragraph done. It's really simple, and I'll show you how to do it, okay? But it's important that you understand the cast out idea, okay? So here, for the essay, there is 2 formats that you can do, okay? One is called the block format, and it's pretty simple. You'll have the reading passage, topic, and thesis. I don't know why it keeps doing that, okay? And then how it relates to the lecture in your first paragraph. So the reading introduces blah, 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 blah. The lecture states, right? So the reading introduces that blue is the best color. However, the lecture casts doubt by stating that blue is not the best color. Then paragraph 2, okay, will be the reading details, main ideas, and examples. And then paragraph 3 will be the listening, main ideas, and details, okay? This is typically an easier one, but I usually recommend using the block format for the other 2 types, for the support and the additional information essay types. I recommend for the cast doubt that you do the point by point, because the main idea in the reading and the main idea in the listening, right, go together, each one, okay? So here, first paragraph is exactly the same. You'll have the reading thesis, how it relates, and the lecture thesis, right? So the reading says that red is the best color in the world. However, the lecture casts doubt by stating that red is not always the best color, okay? Then you'll start the next paragraphs always with the listening, okay? And then you will connect it with the reading. Okay. And it'll go in the order. It'll usually match up in order. Okay. So another thing to keep in mind is the actual question. So if you look at the actual question, it says, okay, summarize the reading passage. Oh, sorry, this is wrong. And the listener, this is, oh, right, sorry, never mind. This isn't the question. Sorry. Explain how the listening is related to the writing. Okay. So the actual focus of the essay is supposed to be the listening. So for each body paragraph, you want 80% on the point by point, 80% to be about the listening, and 20% to be about the reading. Okay, because to actually score well on this, right, for the actual IBT TOEFL, it tells you to summarize the lecture, explain the lecture, and how it relates to the reading. And the thing is, when you're writing about the listening, you're actually also writing about the reading at the same time, because it casts out on those information. And I'll show you an example in just a second, okay? So here, there's no hook, there's no, interesting thing, and there is no conclusion, because it's not an opinion essay, okay? So here, the reading introduces that paying employees on commission is more beneficial for both employees and companies. However, the lecture, right, relates by cast doubt on the reading and saying paying employees on commission is not the best method for several reasons. Now here, for each one, easy transition word, and then the speaker claims or the speaker argues. Okay. Now, if you look, 80% of my passage is about the listening. This refutes, okay, made by the author or the reading, okay? So I actually only put one sentence, okay? And they actually only need one sentence, because the this is saying everything else, everything I just wrote is refuting or casting doubt or disagreeing. Same thing. This contradicts, okay? So here, it's really important that they get all that information, right, from the listening section. However, you can use the reading, okay, as a prediction, because if it says well, we know it's going to be cast out, right? That way, hey, if the reading says that, blue is the best color because the ocean, we know that the lecture will say something about the ocean not being blue or not being good or something of that nature, okay? And then there is no conclusion. Okay. Any questions on integrated writing? No? Okay, so again, for the actual class, you're only going to have like the first 2 paragraphs. So hopefully you'll be able to get through the first paragraph and maybe at least get some notes or annotate some of the listening details for the students in their workbook. That way they can use that to write out their full essay when they go home for iLearning, okay? So again, this is where common relationship, and then there's a section to write. I like to use the workbook again, okay? And that would be for your integrated writing. Here's the audio button down here.
There has been much discussion about changing the work week from the current 5 days to 4.
Okay, so the 4-day work week, stuff like that, okay? All right, just really quickly, along with the odd weeks being writing, the even weeks will be your opinion speaking. This is much simpler, okay? Again, the workbook does have it in there, right? They'll basically have 15 seconds to think, 45 seconds to answer. Their job is to usually give 2 to 3 good reasons. I usually tell my students, give me 2 really good reasons or 3 okay reasons, okay, to answer this question. For the independent speaking task, it's basically broken down into an opinion, choice, or preference, right? So personal opinion, for example, name a person who has influenced you most, state the reason, and support your answer. So here they can name any person they like, right? So this would be any choice, right? And then here, some people like to study in groups. Other people like to prefer to study alone. Which do you prefer and why? So that's the kind of like the difference between a personal preference, personal opinion, and preference and choice, okay? Here, again, I usually tell them give 2 really good reasons or 3 okay reasons, okay? Now, one thing you may have noticed with your students when you ask them like, oh, what do you think? Why do you think something is good? They have a real big problem deciphering the differences between a main idea and a minor detail, right? So sometimes they just give a whole bunch of minor details. Another issue that you might have is sometimes the students, they just repeat the same idea more than once, right? So, oh, I prefer studying in groups because it's really fun. Second, I can just have more fun with my friends because it's good and it's fun. Lastly, studying in groups is a lot of enjoyable fun, right? And you're like, ah, okay, well, you got one reason really, but so to help them out, there's a couple acronyms, there's a couple of things that you can use, but one, because again, it's an academic based, right? So you can give them the topics, right? So give them major details. So this is usually what we use at our branch. It's called cheesy, okay? So you write cheesy, and if you've heard it before, it's basically like these are main ideas or major details you can use that don't overlap that much, okay? So here, they only need to choose 2 or 3 of them. So if we use the question, do you like to study in groups or do you like to study individually? So it doesn't matter which one, it could be good or bad, right? So here you can say, oh, well, one, yeah, it's entertainment because it's fun. I said that, right? Yeah. So what else do you want to use? Oh, it's good for my education because I get to get better scores. My scores go up, right? And then I get A pluses. Anything else you can think of? Oh, it's safe. It's safer that way, right? Because, you know, maybe a murderer wants to kill me, but I'm with my big group and no one can stop me. All right, that's probably the weakest one, but hey, you got 3 different ones. Great job. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so cheesy, write it down, remember it, or make your own. That's okay. All right. All right, that's pretty much the speaking section, okay? So again, for iLearning and homework, remember they have the essay writings that you need to introduce. In addition, there will be weeks 9 and 11. There are just independent essay writings, and then topical speaking goes throughout the whole term. Don't forget collocation vocabulary and all those things. Also, C-learning grades for the speaking and writing. I know some branches or some places they have a little difficulty with that. Just remember you need to put in all your grades, okay? Any questions?
Okay, Peter, I have a question.
Yeah.